Krishna, everyone. We're going to get started. Thank you. Yeah, maybe, Krishna, can you close that door? Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. I think everyone is very excited for this poetry reading with Jayanta, Prabhu. And would you be able to tell everyone to be quiet? Thank you so much. Jayanta Prabhu is an amazing devotee, amazing person, and he's an immigration lawyer by profession, and is the immigration lawyer for many people, many devotees here at Bhakti Center and just in general. And he's written this beautiful book called Miracle of Mustard and Other Poems. And he's going to be sharing his poetry with us today. And we're very, very excited. So everyone please give him a big round of applause.
Thank you very much. Well, I thought I'd start by telling a little bit about myself and how I became familiar with Krishna consciousness and met devotees for the first time. Seems a little funny to be talking about myself that much, but I think the poems are really about my journey towards accepting Krishna consciousness. And so I think it would help from that perspective to hear the story. So it was 1970. I was a college student. Is this loud enough? Can everyone hear? I was a college student in New York, and a couple of friends and I decided to spend the summer in California and be like hippies, college hippies was the term we used to use. And we went to various places, and we split up in various groupings because there were too many of us to hitchhike all at once. And I was traveling with my friend who became a devotee eventually. His name was Danadar. And we were traveling around California, and we stayed in is it on? Do I need this? We were staying.
Speak more close.
We were staying in Los Angeles.
It's better. You can tilt it a little bit towards you also. Yes.
Okay. We were staying in Los Angeles at the house of a couple of young men, and no one really knew how to cook except me, and my skills were very limited. So every day we would eat basically the same thing, which was brown rice and vegetable, fish, which we either bought or shoplifted from a nearby market. But okay, so we had about 100-pound bag of brown rice that I would use every day. And add something to it and some spices that we had. And we got really tired of eating like this every day. And one day, one of the guys, whose name was Eric, said that he had met Krishna devotees on the street, and they gave him a little card that said that there was a free feast, a love feast, on Sunday at the temple in Los Angeles. So we went there, and I was immediately captivated by the place. The first thing I saw when I walked in was a giant picture of the Sringadev, ripping apart Ranya Kashipu. I said, well, what is that, And I made the devotees explain it to me. And then they started talking about the Bhagavad Gita, and everything just seemed so fascinating. So we went home and we were all just talking about this. But we had plans to move to San Francisco. And I thought, well, it's a shame, because they had actually said that Prabhupada was coming to visit the next week, but we were on our way. And Eric, who was a musician, traded his amplifier, music amplifier, for a car. So you can imagine what kind of car it was. It was an old beat-up Pontiac station wagon. And the four of us did everything in that car for a few days while we drove 500 miles or so to San Francisco. And I was sharing the middle row of seats with a bag of rice, and which was actually a good arrangement, I had some room to lie down and sleep. And then when we got to San Francisco, we were supposed to stay in this other young man's apartment, but he told us that wasn't available. But that there was a parking lot across the street, which was actually the parking lot of a football stadium for a professional football team. But since it was the summer, they weren't using it, and it was completely vacant. And so we just parked the car in there and slept there. We woke up in the morning, and there was a man fixing a truck nearby in the next parking space. It's a big old pickup truck, and he was, he had his head in the engine compartment, and he was fiddling with tools, and then he stood up, and we saw that he was a devotee. And it turned out that was Jayanta, a very famous devotee. And we said, what are you doing here? And we're like, what's going on? He said, well, you park right behind the San Francisco temple. And so we just walked in right through the back door, and it was a place about as big as this room, and kind of beat up old place with, if I remember, some musty carpet on the floor, but we were just totally mesmerized by the excitement of it, and it was a time when the whole world seemed to be changing, and everything was very intoxicating in many ways, and this just seemed to fit right in, and it was just an amazing experience. So we basically stayed with them, sleeping in the car for quite a long time, until it was time to go back to New York and go back to our separate schools. But Danadar and I tried to keep up our attendance at the Brooklyn Temple, and we finally located it. Back in those days, you didn't have GPS, you didn't have the internet. You had like telephone books if you wanted to find something. Or you can call up on the phone and ask the operator where something is. So we didn't really locate the temple for quite a while. And we did, and we really loved that place too. Get really excited to go to those feasts on Sunday. But I was 19 years old, and my parents were not very happy about this new development in me. Vegetarian now, didn't want to eat, didn't want to wear leather, didn't want to hear about anything really but Krishna consciousness. And it was a lot of struggle with my family, and finally things came to a head, and we had this huge confrontation, and it just became too much for me to fight with them about this, and I had to make the decision to jump and join the temple or not. And I know you hear from a lot of devotees how they made that jump, but I didn't. So and I tried from that point on to stay away from Krishna consciousness. I didn't want to hear about it. I wanted to go back to being a hippie. I wanted to try other things, Zen meditation, Tai Chi, something to fill up that space, And and I didn't have much to do with it for quite a long time. And I would go on to graduate school and then to law school, and I basically had nothing to do with devotees except now and then I would see somebody on the street or something. And finally, I was working as an immigration lawyer, and little by little, some devotees were coming to my office to talk about whether they could get a visa or what they could do. And, I said, yeah, I know something about this stuff. I actually knew quite a few devotees that were well known, and was that young man Eric in Los Angeles also became a devotee named like Shobia. And anyway, I thought, well, I really enjoyed talking to these people and doing these cases. And little by little, I started feeling more open to the idea of going back to the temple, take a look, see what it's like. Try chanting one day, and suddenly I was doing it, but I didn't have that excitement that I had when I was 19. Because now I was like, 50 something, and I didn't have that openness to it, where I could just let it take over, And but little by little, things started becoming more convincing. I felt a little bit of faith, a little confidence in what I was doing, and I eventually decided to become initiated with Kadamba Kanana Swami, and he's very much into literature, the literature of the Vaishnavas, and I showed him some poems that I wrote, and he said, yeah, I like them, and then I sent him some more by email. And then I was listening to his weekly Zoom during the COVID era, and he was reading my poetry to everyone. And he said, well, these are pretty good, he should publish these. And I said, oh, that's a very nice thing to say, I felt very flattered. Now, I forgot to mention one thing. I had managed to establish a friendship with Satsvarupa Maharaj, Satsvarupa Das Maharaj. And he heard this Zoom that Kadamba Kanana Swami made, and he said to me, you're not understanding this in the right way, because your guru is giving you an order. Well, he's a very strict kind of devotee. He takes things very seriously, especially his relationship with Prabhupada. And he said, no, you can't just, wave this off. You have to publish the book now. And in fact, he sent me quite a large amount of money to help me with any expenses that were involved. And I was just too flabbergasted. But I knew that it would be offensive to try to return it. And I said, I'm going to have to do it. So I started collecting the poems, looking through all my various computers that I had in the office, at home. Where did I keep the poems? I don't even know what half of them were. And I finally was able to put together enough to make a book, actually more than enough. Some of them I thought weren't good enough to be in the book. But so that's how the book came about. And I'm still struggling a little bit to put it on Amazon, and so people can order a copy. But for now, I have quite a few printed copies. In fact, if anybody wants one today, they'll be available. So that's the story of how this book came to be and how I came to be whatever I am. And so I guess we'll get started. I thought I'd read a few poems if anyone has a question at any time, it's fine. I really hope that somebody will ask something. And I'll give a little explanation about each poem before we read it. So what's the first one that's on the list?
Going back.
Going back. I'm not an organized person, but I learned to depend on organized people. Going back. Can I find it? Okay, thank you. Page 22. I walk through downtown Brooklyn streets, in these days converted into upscale homes, looking for the site of my inspiration and turmoil 50 years earlier. It had persisted in memory as a collection of strong experiences. So I'm talking about looking for the old Brooklyn Temple, where I had gone so many times. That supreme original personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, expanding his plenary portion as Mahavishnu, the first incarnation, creates this manifested cosmos, but he is unborn. The creation, however, takes place in him, and the material substance and manifestations are all himself. He maintains them for some time and absorbs them into himself again. And then I have the Srimad Bhagavatam site. It's from Prabhupada's translation. And now the poem actually starts. Every temple is a holy site, a dham, it is said. The Brooklyn Radha Krishna Temple, Henry Street and Kane, in some ways it is gone. Its deities and congregation moved a half mile away, and its rooms converted into apartments for the young and rich. But it remains a vortex at the center of swirling memory, claiming pieces and moments of the inner world I thought was mine. Driving by on the city highway, I always glanced that way. And the brownstone area is still awash in incense and weeping devotees, and it is always summer in hot New York streets. When cold breezes come through open windows wherever I am, I recall the temple in winter, heavy wool socks and long johns under dhotis, and it is always a dark morning, streets sunless with their frozen trash. Still I hear it before dawn, the young golden boy waving his brass bell, past every cot and blanket, a kid born there and capable of delivering wisdom, chiding and warning. Sleep is ignorance. But such things are not lost, and we are permitted to remember our dreams until they exist again. So I'm sort of playing with the idea there that, you lose things, but then okay. I know this thing's gonna hit me in the nose eventually.
Try it, yeah. As much as you go right directly to the mic.
Okay. Okay. What's the next poem?
This thing is bad.
For SDG, that's from Buddha's Swami.
Okay. So this is SDG, is Sadhvarupa Das Goswami, who I was talking about before. It's on page 25, if anybody has the book already.
I'll do this one.
What happened?
Battery died in the mic.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Is it still recording if I do it this way?
Is, yeah.
Okay. Poem is called For SDG. Sadhvarupa Das Goswami is a prominent guru in Krishna consciousness and a prolific writer and poet. Your practice for 50 years and more, how to get rid of the nonsense and find the truth in voice. How does it sound? Is that okay? No, just say it right out. When I read him, The voice is heard with the eyes. Sometimes I hold my breath when it's full of meaning. Exhale only when a white space appears between sections. You have shaved and whittled it until the shape of the thing appears, your literary voice, ready, clear, complete. So upon Krishna's embrace at your entry into his world, you will have to say nothing at all. What's the next one I have? Is it?
Homage revised.
Yeah. So what happened is I showed this poem to Jayanta Swami, and he kind of laughed and said the idea of Satsvarupa not writing something or saying something was impossible. So with that thought in mind, I rewrote the poem. It's called Homage Revised after Vyasa Puja 2019 for Satsvarupa Das Goswami, aged 80 years. And for those of you who don't know, Vyasa Puja is a birthday celebration for a guru. He read his poems aloud, sharing his memories, revealing his doubts, and I have that in quotations. But how minuscule they seem. Small stones in a shoe, no leather, while the feet are barely touching ground. These are not doubts, just the bites and scratches that lovers enjoy. He is moving eventually and inexorably to Krishna's embrace at the door that is no door. He will simply find himself there, surrounded by gopas, leaning on their staffs, smiling like wise guy boys in on an affectionate joke, gopis holding trays of sweets and savories. He will eat without restriction, as quickly as he wants. Teeth perfected again, diet no concern, strong as a sailor. If anybody reads this about him, he was in the Navy before Krishna consciousness. I thought he might be silent, nothing left to say when he entered that world, communicating freely in the way of spirits. But Jayadvaita Swami believes, even then, he will have a yellow pad in hand. He will find Vyasadeva, Lord of sacred books, amidst a pile of scripture. SDG will visit him, or maybe stay, or simultaneously visit and stay, opening style books with delight, reading a language more sacred than Sanskrit, penetrating consciousness directly. But those books of formal construction would be useless things, because every page would say, your writing is always correct. He will open eyes wide as he examines pens that don't stain the fingers, recording pastimes that occur faster than he can write, swooning as he realizes the writing itself is a pastime. What's next?
Costumes.
What's it called?
Costumes.
Costumes, okay. So costumes, I have little deities at home. And if you have deities, you have to occasionally change their outfits if you have any respect for the deities. And so I have a little introduction in the book. It says, many devotees of Krishna have deities at home and care for them with offerings of prasada meals and changes of clothing and ornaments on a regular basis. The deity's clothing is changed every 2 weeks, which is not often enough, but I am a poor host. My disguises change more often. This morning, attempting to explain myself to them, I approached them as Goofy, the absurd Disney dog, guffawing and shuffling, absurd outfit and slinky tail, almost knocking them over by handling with clumsy white-gloved paws. But reading of the glories of Lord Nityananda, who chooses to be Sesha Ananta, the many-headed snake, effortlessly bearing worlds upon his hoods, or Garuda, mighty bird carrier of the Lord, I became human and saw with some delight how they displayed their reddish palms. What's the next?
Footprints.
It's on page 37.
Working now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so Footprints. This is a poem about the cowherd boys, the Gopas, who are Krishna's and Balaram's friends, and in their relationship. When he is not with them, the cowherd boys hunt for his footprints, and Tulsi leaves within, marveling at the divine markings pressed onto soft earth, the enchanting fragrance. They peer, hoping to find among the trees, along the cow paths, near the ponds, under branches, amid the grass and flowers. How can I be like those friends, so sure of his protection, so desirous of his presence? I scour the books for an answer, listen to the kirtan, the japa, gaze at the deities, the paintings, press everyone for information. When will I become one of those divine searchers? So it's a kind of I hate to explain my own poems, but these boys are looking everywhere for Krishna's footprints, and I'm looking everywhere for something to make my faith more secure. And then I finally say, when will I be like these boys, searching everywhere? But actually it's already starting to happen. I'm already searching. Just not with the sure faith that they have, but something is growing. What's next?
Sakya.
Doesn't have the page on it yet, does it?
No.
Oh, I got it, 42. So here's a little explanation in the poem. Sakya is one of several moods that exist in the spiritual world. It is a feeling of friendship towards Krishna exhibited by his Gopa boyhood friends. Did not even one wonder, how long have we been here? Time paused to allow their play without end. Not one thought of home. The moments elongated, opening. No one there to disrupt or ask a question. No, not one thought it odd. Everyone only wanted to be near him. So much time, days passing, but never ending. Coming each morning, returning each evening, always there. Steal his lunch tiffin, that's a little box with a lunch in it. Fan his glistening face with broad leaves after he chased the thieves, laughing. Laughing, laughing, laughs that echo around heaven. What a miracle is there that he could not catch them, happy to see them eat his food. Enough for them all. The gopis praise these boys, noting, they are like us, they see no hope in family life. Not one moment is wasted in ordinary dreams.
At the Yamuna shore.
Okay, this is a poem I wrote after watching a beautiful video of Prabhupada and devotees in the early days of the movement, visiting Vrindavan and going to the Yamuna River. So I'd like to just watch it first, and then read the poem as we're watching it again.
Shabbat Sharada Vandala
Okay. Maybe we could just play the very beginning part while I read the poem, just as long as I'm reading. So I was struck by some things in this. It's an amazing thing anyway. It's really a precious thing. Yeah, let it be, yes, no volume. I wrote an explanation. The Yamuna is the sacred river that flows through Vrindavana and is here visited by A.C. Bhaktivedanta and a group of his disciples. Srila Prabhupada on the shore and a host of devotees bathing in the Yamuna. It must have been a cool morning. They dipped their toes, fingers, testing the temperature and looking tentatively at him as he massaged his head with a palm full of water. The young men waded in and splashed, looking behind to see what he would do. Finally, he removed bag, watch, sweater, stepped in and dropped down below the waters. What reason for his hesitant behavior, this lion of Krishna, fearless founder? He savored the moment, teased it out, kept his face straight as the boys cavorted. They watched him back and forth, and as the delicious tension stretched out, they looked at him, the irresistible center of attraction. They saw him submerge. That was his gift to them. And for himself, what experience, who of us could say? Perhaps feeling the cold embrace that had washed Krishna and Kaliya too, hearing the swirling whispers of divine history, finding his heavy duty by the Lord's grace included a playful plunge into eternal waters. Yeah, in the book I have the link to that if anybody wants to copy it out. It's an amazing video. Has anybody seen that before? It's the kind of, yeah. What's the next one?
There I was.
I'm sorry?
There I was.
There I was. Okay. So this is a poem about my feelings that although I was getting back into Krishna consciousness, I wasn't quite capturing the enthusiasm I had as a kid. So what I did is just write down all the things I remembered about that early time. There I was, my first meeting with a devotee. Outside the LA temple, he praised me for having read Bhagavad Gita and did not comment on my interpretation. I stared transfixed at the painting of the Srimadeva near the entrance and asked what it was all about. Carrying my copy of the As It Is, Gita, all that summer, in my army jacket purchased in cold San Francisco when I first arrived in California in 1970. Sleeping in a car outside the SF temple, cleaning the kitchen, joining the throbbing Sankirtan line among hipsters, looking at Golden Gate Park, helping at Golden Gate Park feasts. An older devotee visited with the still unpublished Krishna book, and I marveled that anyone could know the personal activities of God. Endlessly thinking of the meaning of that title, As It Is, and now the very words bring me memories of the delicious prasadam, especially dal and chapatis. Looking at the verses by firelight at Stinson Beach, feeding logs to be consumed by the flames, as I read about the temporary value of worshiping the demigods. Searching for the temple back in New York, running with anticipation from Danadar's car to the temple for Sunday feasts, ecstasy before the deities alone in the temple room and reading Krishna to them. Saw Srila Prabhupada at JFK Airport. He peered at me for an electric moment, a bit of recognition or a grimace, but a meeting of the eyes, our entire and eternal instant of connection. Only a moment, but it happened for sure. But then I spent long years avoiding Krishna, feeling a person glancing down at my Buddhist meditation. What about me? Finally visiting bhakti temples in New York, one darshan or one fragrance, it was enough to wake up memories, bouncing back and forth, trying, talking to Harikesha, who loves the deities, talking to Satguru Maharaj. He listened with attention and seriousness and gave silent blessing. Visiting Vrindavana with Danadar, feeling the wonder of Sri Balaram's face at the mandir, and the sadness when that feeling was gone, and the way it instantly returned when I yearned for it. Stunned by Radhakund, cold embrace of the water, and her unquestioned presence. Initiation by Kadamba Kanda Swami, a key to the door. Here I am. What's the next one?
Please. Taste of Desire.
Oh, yeah, this poem got me into a little trouble, but figured I'll do it anyway. Gopis, taste of desire. And here's a quotation from our translation of Chaitanya Charitamrita by Prabhupada. 4 kinds of devotees are the receptacles of the 4 kinds of mellows in love of God, namely servitude, friendship, parental affection, and conjugal love. Each kind of devotee feels that his sentiment is the most excellent, and thus in that mood he tastes great happiness with Lord Krishna. Increasing love is experienced in various tastes, one above another, but that love which has the highest taste in the gradual succession of desire manifests itself in the form of conjugal love. That's Prabhupada's version of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and the Nectar of Devotion. As we sat with him in shade on the grazing meadow, only I looked away. I saw them off in the distance, lingering, dressed in saris of brilliant color, carrying sweets on golden trays, fans, fragrance, implements for a game of love. Watching. They wait like hunting birds, their thirsty eyes, their flushed cheeks, their secret knowing glances. Neighborhood girls, he used to play like we do, but they are changing. They are wandering nearer to us, hoping for his glance. I feel a chill send through the air. It's not time yet for him to turn towards them. Don't they see the joy in our games, our thefts of his lunch, teasing, chasing, grasping, wrestling, massaging his weary limbs, hearing his soft sighs? And tomorrow we will wake him again, chide him, sleepy boy, rub sweet oil into his hair, dress him for another dawn. In his play, his smile, he is completely content, lazing in the golden sun, hours. But their eyes are on him. They want more from him than this innocent play of ours. So Prabhu said, "Tu rasika." What's the next one?
Miracle of mustard.
Oh yeah. I think this is the first poem I wrote that I thought was any good. And it kind of launched me into having a little more confidence to write. It is said that devotees would rub Srila Prabhupada with mustard oil, and he attributed his good health to his daily walks and those massages. When one is initiated as a devotee, the Guru chants on a new set of japa beads. Following Hari Vilas' suggestion, I soaked my new beads in mustard oil and dried them in the sun. I did not stop there. I applied mustard oil all over myself. One heats it and notes the deep aroma, rubs it in vigorously, then a brief warm shower, and be sure you don't wash it all off. So I went to bed with oil still on my skin, pleasantly smooth, relaxed. I kept sliding out of bed like a seal on the ice. I slid out of my house and kept sliding on the snowy streets. I slid all the way to the Indian grocery. I asked for more so I could do it again. I thought it was the fragrance shop in New Jersey, my source of pickle and ghee, bags of spice. But there was no cash register, and I had in my pocket only little rupee notes. The grocer was a resident of Raj. That means Vrindavana. I had slid to India over the sea. Sleek dolphins and whales my escorts, shiny beasts that know God, in the waters cool and deep, in the stars they see as they leap free. As they swam, throbbing and quick, weaving under and up and over, from their glances I could feel in a moment of ecstasy that they knew me too. Hari said, mustard seed oil has many benefits. It's like a dream. What's next?
Window to another world.
Okay. That painting in the back, the last one, that's what this poem is about. There's a painting of Krishna and some animals and dancing together. I saw the painting in the room of deities. Krishna danced and was joyous, happy in the presence of those around him, cows, birds, monkey. Not one was capable of speaking a word, but in mute rapture they approached, drawn, attracted, unable to turn their gaze away. Denizens of the holiest of all places in the woods of Vrindavana. That morning I had walked down Lower Manhattan, trash-smelled streets, and tried to recognize those around me. I could see only that they were the expressionless, the hurrying, the dangerous, the fearful. Unable to look each other in the eye, they moved in independent, untouching orbits around an unseen and unsuspected truth. There I was among them, with a thought I dared not speak, a message I did not deliver. Not really part of that silent world, but yet not yet able to enter the other. No, in fact, I was also there in that blessed forest scene, the last adoring beast to arrive, a step or two away, beginning to move closer, timid, a quiet heart finding its voice at last. So I felt, when I was looking at that painting, all these animals standing around Krishna, and then I realized I was standing there too. So I felt I was the last beast to arrive. Okay, so what's the next one?
Turning points.
Okay. So this poem is about a sad but somehow wonderful moment when we realized that our guru was very ill. You know, Kadambakana Swami died a few months ago, and he told people several months before that he was sick, and I felt that he kept us informed all through the sickness of how he was doing, and I think he was being very careful about us, preparing us so that the shock of his disappearance wouldn't be that horrible, unendurable. And at the moment that he was giving that, so what he did is he sent a message to all of his disciples that he would have a Zoom that we could watch where he would talk about this stuff. And at that very moment I was writing this poem, and the poem was about an experience I had when I was reading his favorite scripture, the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And in the scripture there's this part where, kind of a very dry part, where all the books that were written by all of the major disciples are described. So it just says that, you know, this Goswami wrote these books, and he had this many disciples, and this one. It goes on and on for many pages with just a sort of a catalog. And then all of a sudden, those people decide to go to visit Lord Chaitanya. And then suddenly you're in this whole different mood where he's talking to them, he's experiencing things and they're witnessing it. So I felt that there was this very sudden change in the atmosphere of the book. And that's what I was writing the poem about. And I was comparing it to a roller coaster, you know. And it was just at that moment that I found out about Kadambakana Swami. So I felt like, you know, this is the real roller coaster ride. This is the real, you know, sudden change. So I kind of, the poem kind of like two poems stuck together. But anyway, he told me a line from Chaitanya Charitamrita. What is the use of the arrow of the hunter, of the words of the poet, if they do not pierce the heart and make the head spin? I am old enough that the Brooklyn of my youth is gone. My father was from an older version still. Radio shows, fighting, enlisting during the Second World War right after high school. All the young men smoked. I was 5 and he took me to Coney Island, and we sat on the Cyclone roller coaster. Rickety wood beams painted white, a tarnished safety bar across our laps, tightened as the ride began. Up we went, slowly bumping and halting. At the top we could see the beach and the sea and the sun. And then the speed, the hurtling, rattling cars, the screaming. I tasted the pitted bar as I seized it close and endured a few minutes of terror. Chaitanya Charitamrita, it means the character of living force in immortality. It is the favorite shastra of Kadambakana Maharaj, and reportedly the choice of Srila Prabhupada if he had to have just one. We read about the history of the universe in technical detail, and the branches of the sect for several generations, and the detailed lists of the writings of the Goswamis, summaries of the various sections of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, divided into seas and waves. And after we move slowly through the long lists of the contributions of the great Goswamis, Rupa, Jiva, Sanatana, the text roars to life. We witness their visit to Mahaprabhu at Jagannath Puri, and we hear about his unsurpassable ecstasy, his absorption in the deities, and his identification with the love of the gopis and separation from their beloved. I grasped the book tightly, almost afraid to turn the page. How much was I qualified to hear about these intimate details of the life of the Lord in this sudden and astounding acceleration? There he was in detailed description, his actual movements and conversations. The author's information from intimate sources is impeccable. The devotion of a chain of witnesses undoubtable. The transcendent experience of inspiration provided by the text is shared by 600 years of lovers, saints, and servants. And I thought that was a shock, that rapid ascent to literary joy. Thought that I understood how quickly things can turn, until I heard Maharaja's quiet explanation today, as he delivered the news to soften the blow. Hearing him speak, explaining what the months ahead would bring, a chasm kept widening, his future beginning to take its form as I imagined remembering him, even as he spoke. He straightens out my life and he turns it upside down. But the bitter news has its sweet taste somehow, as his courage and faith are unshaken. He invited us to meet him in Vrindavana, and soon, the splendor of his new home as it is being prepared, the warmth of the embrace he will feel on his arrival. Is the shadow of these what we feel in these moments that confuse the heart? There is a distant music to be heard in the heartbreaking time we have with him now, while he laughs. I'm a tough Dutchman. So that was a very intense moment. I felt kind of in a daze for a couple of days after hearing him announce that. And I did want to go on that trip to Vrindavan, so I think the next poem is about that. What is that?
The material world and it's not kidding.
Yeah. Yeah, so I decided, he invited us to come to Vrindavan around August, September, and I decided to go. But then, after 3 days of sore throat and 4 days before leaving for Vrindavana, I tested positive for COVID. I'm already gliding into couch potato mode. Did you know that a home virus test takes exactly as long to show results as a frozen pizza? Hard to chant with a scratchy throat, easy to find excuses. How does one respond to this kind of event? I determined to go there in my mind, touch the dust of my head when I enter, go to Mongol Artik at 4 a.m. each day, buy beautiful outfits for Gornatai, and feel the undeniable inspiration from the deity of Lord Balaram, whose eyes could see me. Do japa sitting quietly at the samadhi of Srila Prabhupada. With every moment I will feel that I am right there in my own heart, and at the heart of everything. But the next one is conversations, I think. I found out that I could go. I realized I didn't have any symptoms, didn't have any positive tests, so I just went. But before I did, I had told him that I wasn't coming. He wrote back an email to me. He was always very good about answering the emails, and I told him that I couldn't come. He learned of my inability to join him, and then in quotes, "That is a disappointment. In my mind, I already had several conversations with you. Magnificent discussions, they have taken place in the timeless realm of our affection. Everything was composed perfectly. But I was able to go, and think the next poem's Entering. Is it?
Mhm.
This is about my poem about when many devotees have confirmed that they had the same experience that I do when I go to Vrindavan. It's like the first few hours and days are always a little chaotic, a little confusing, you know, kind of trying to get into the mood of the place, but you're troubled by things that you left behind, that what you have to do to get back, and can't just really seem to get into it. But so I said, grumpy old Jewish gray stubble head carries worries around like a crumpled brown bag with numbers written on it. Lord Balaram hooks it with his plow and tosses it into non-existence. You are here, don't miss it. What a perfect smile as he leans with a naughty air upon the shoulder of Brother Almighty. You have the picture of it right there too. That's what the deities in Vrindavan look like. I have entered the Dham. So somehow or another, after a couple of days, I was there. What's the next one?
Last poem.
Okay. I had a few more poems about Vrindavan that time, but this one's called Last Poems on page 96, although it's not actually the last poem. So many had arisen for 430 Mangalartik. That devotee has long understood, and by the mercy of Lord Balaram, I also had been shown that we are not this body. But for the third straight day, he saved a chair for me next to him, with the old folks along the wall. I don't know if any of you have been there, but you know, there's a great big courtyard in the temple in Vrindavan, and there's about 5 chairs, and people are always fighting over them and hiding them, and then, you know, carrying it around with them all day. But somehow, if you get a chair, you're very fortunate. But this old guy saved the chair next to him, and so I had a place to sit every day. So I said, for the third straight day, he saved a chair for me next to him, with the old folks along the wall. He was another older guy. We learn each other's ways and accept them. Every morning I would peer over heads, pressed in the crowd before their lordships, and then retreat in search of a seat. Will he continue to hold one for me after I leave today? On my other side, old Shlomo, long past squeezing and rushing before them, and thus content to view the video of the deities projected on a screen. And then he said to me, "Can you see? Move your chair closer to me." I said I could see, leaning to my left to do it. But I realized we must recognize kindness and move my seat nearer to him. We bowed for the call and response, in praise of so many things for which we are grateful. One old man every morning rushed his jaya, his hoarse croak preceding all other voices, that gravelly jaya. Somehow or other we realize the nature of this holy Dham. In the midst of the worries we bring and the ecstasy we are given, the irritation of heat and crowds and the touch of the Lord, there is a way forward. Follow the teachings, chant the holy names, serve each other, wait for him. But poets should not overstay their welcome. As I sat scribbling, I felt the cool spray of a hose. The black and white floor was being washed beneath my feet. All the other chairs and the assembled devotees were gone. The cleaning man did not look at me as I got up and joined my hands in apology. Thank you for that too. I think that's the last one.
Just a touch.
Okay, just touches the actual last poem. So Prabhupada says, if there is faith, understanding will follow. Do I have faith? I told my friend walking through Brooklyn streets to see the Henry Street site that I have at least a little, a touch. It would not do to deny it. After changing the clothes of the deities one Sunday evening, I reached over to adjust Lord Nityananda's turban. There, he looks resplendent, happy, alive. Just a touch was enough. That's it. Does anyone have a question or something? Nothing? Yes.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. There are sources of inspiration to writing poetry. Do you have some other poets which inspire you?
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I didn't hear the end.
What are the poets actually that inspires you? What are your sources
The
of
poets that
inspiration?
inspire me? I like this poet Surdas. He's a famous Vaishnava poet. Wait, I'll sign it later. And I don't know. It's hard to say. The scriptures, of course, are very poetic. Mirabai is a beautiful poet. I don't know. There's a lot of things. I don't really have a favorite. I guess Surdas, I would say, have to say, is probably my favorite.
Surdas.
Yeah. Some beautiful books, collections. Not all the poems are really by him, apparently. A lot of poets took that name, but there's at least a few hundred poems by him that have been collected. I hear that there are some devotees I've heard recently have been writing poems. I want to see them. I'm not really familiar with them, but I'm hoping we can have some kind of communication. Anybody else?
This might sound weird, but do you think in poetry, or do you think in prose and then translate that to poetry?
Well, I don't think my poems are very poetic in the sense that they have, like rhyme or meter or anything. So there's not that much difference, really, between prose and the way I write poetry. I am following a certain tradition in modern poetry that feels that way, that the line of poetry doesn't have to be constructed the way it was in the Renaissance, in Shakespeare's time, that there's really, it's free. But I would say, though, that when I write the poems, sometimes I realize that there's a lot of inaccuracy, a lot of excess in our language that doesn't really mean anything. It's like garbage, junk that you have to throw in. And when you write the poem, you really want to, I guess you're trying to do two contradictory things at the same time. You're trying to make the language as precise as possible, but you also want to convey several different possible meanings, So, so it is a special kind of language. I would say it's not really regular language, because people have even pointed out to me some things that they see in the poems, and I say, if I had read this poem, I probably would have said that also, but I didn't realize that when I wrote it. So some kind of magical things happen sometimes. But I would say that a related idea is like, where does the inspiration come from to write a poem? Because I can go like weeks without thinking of any. I can't just sit down and think of them. Something will happen. The one poem that we read today, you remember that day that somebody oh God, it happens so often I can't even remember the details, but somebody killed some people on the subway or something. Or they shot a bunch of people, I don't know, they didn't all die. And then they found this guy very quickly somehow. But that was a very odd day, you know, people were afraid to go on the subway. And that's the day that I came here, and then I saw that painting in the back. And I had this idea about how people on the street were so untrusting of each other, and so nervous and apprehensive about contact with each other. And then here was Krishna with these animals, and so alive and you know, intimate with each other. And so that kind of contradiction sparked the poem, and it was easy to write it. I mean, it takes me a million years to get an idea, but then it doesn't take very long to write the poem. So that's the way I do it.
I'm very drawn to the simplicity of your writing. You say there's not much difference between your prose and your poetry, but there are these little pockets of poetic devices. There's simile here and metaphor there and alliteration here, but nothing that overpowers it.
Yeah.
And that elevates the language.
Yeah, I really, thank you. That's a very good description of what I'm trying to do. I hate poems that you can't understand. I mean, I studied literature in school, and after college and grad school, you know. And at first, when I would read poems that I couldn't understand, I would feel like, you know, there's something wrong with me. I don't have any skill. I don't get it. And then after a few years, I finally said, well, now I know what's wrong with these poems stinks, you know. It's impossible to understand. And like you say, it's overwhelmed by poetic devices. So you have to basically need like a team of people hashing it out to try to figure out what's going on. I mean, why? Why does it have to be like that? There's enough complexity that you can get into language without making it overwhelming with the word you said, you know. Yeah, I don't think poetry should be incomprehensible. And I don't think it should be complaining all the time either. So much of modern poetry is just people moaning about life in this world, or their own lives. But there's plenty of other things you can say besides that. Yes.
So it seems like you write when you have inspiration versus, like, I know some writers also just sit down and force themselves to write when they don't have the inspiration. Yeah. So I wanted to hear a little bit more about your process and how you feel like that dance between you writing the poetry and like Krishna writing through you, like feeling Krishna's presence when you write, like what is kind of your experience, and how has the act and art of writing itself affected your spiritual life?
Very good questions. Well, I don't think I can say that. Well, it's really hard to say, you know, because where did these moments come from? The old poets used to talk about the muse that would inspire them, some kind of mystical voice, you know. But I don't know if I can actually say that Krishna inspires me to write poems. I don't know. I don't think they're good enough to be like that. But I do feel that, and to answer your other question, I think the poems only happen when I'm pretty serious about Krishna consciousness, you know. Kadambakana Swami, one of the last things he said to us was, don't slack off, you know, don't start becoming lazy with your practice. And when I am no poetry is gonna happen. But somehow I know that when I'm, and it's not just a matter of, oh, did I do this week, did I do that? But when I'm taking it seriously and really giving it a chance, you know, that's when these moments happen. When I'm feeling that little touch of faith is really there, when I really believe, as small as it is, that it's real, you know, then it's possible for a poem to appear. So I guess that is being in contact with Krishna when you have some faith, some openness. So yeah, I guess that's where the poems come from. And I can't force myself to write a poem. What's interesting is if you said to me, write a poem about this or that, then I might be able to do it. But when I can't do that by myself. You know, I can't think of an idea. It has to just pop up.
Yeah.
Can you tell us, to get to the last and final version, how many iterations did you go through? Do you revise, polish,
Yeah.
you know, change the wording?
Usually I'll write it and then look at it and decide it needs more work, you know, like I'll take this part out, I'll put something else. And then I'll let it sit for a while, maybe till the next day or something, and then look at it again. I don't know, I kind of know right away if the poem is worth keeping, you know, if it has something in its heart, you know. Sometimes it's just trying too hard to say something. And then I just forget it. After a while, I just throw it out. You know? But I would say it takes at least 3 or 4 times going over the poem very carefully and until it takes its final shape. And there's usually a feeling that if I kept doing it, it would keep changing. So I just have to finally stop and say, whatever it is, this is what it's going to be. You know, I'm not going to keep rewriting it forever. But sometimes when I read it, like even weeks later, I'll say, oh, that line. And often what I think is nobody can understand what that line means. Sometimes I can't remember what when I look at it later, I say, I don't know what I was trying to say there. So how is anyone else going to know? So I just take that out. So it takes some work, but I don't labor over it for months like some people do. I'd say 3 or 4 sessions with the poem.
Do you ever reach points where you have an emotion that you want to express but can't seem to grasp the right language to express it in? Maybe
Yeah.
you're at a block.
Sometimes that happens. Yeah, there's some feelings I'm definitely, in fact, I was just thinking about the other day, there's just some things I can't figure out how to write about. You know, maybe they're too close to home, too confusing, you know, they're still being worked out inside of me, so it's hard to know. But I have to say though, and I encourage anyone who might have an interest in writing, like poetry or other kind of writing, sometimes you will surprise yourself and get something out that you didn't think you could. But I guess there's still some things I haven't figured out how to say. Is that okay? I don't know. I hope that answered your question, but I mean, I'm afraid if I say there are some ideas that I can't figure out how to say, then you can ask me what they are, you know, and I don't know how to explain them. But there's some things about Krishna consciousness, some kinds of experiences that you have that I don't feel quite comfortable talking about. You know, they're a little too personal and a little too. It seems like it would always be like egotistical to talk about that publicly, you know. So there's certain things that I have to kind of leave inside. I mean, it's like a little part of the practice that I guess I'm also a little bit afraid if I did try to describe it and then people said, well, I don't know what you're talking about, then, you know, it would kind of hurt a little bit, so I don't know.
Was the poem called Transitions? Was the poem called Transitions?
Yeah.
Okay. When you read that now, is it difficult for you, since it's about your Guru Maharaj passing?
Oh, that.
Or is it of comfort to you, or are you sort of removed from it in some way?
Well, I'll tell you that I'm comforted that I was affected by his passing. I didn't know him that long, and it's not like I had a very long relationship with him. But he was always confident that he wasn't worried about what was going to happen after he passed. He knew he was going to someplace very special. And thinking about that is very comforting, you know. And also thinking that he's still sort of available for communication, you know. But as for my own feelings about it, I guess it made me realize there was a closeness between us when I felt the shock of his passing, you know. It wasn't just, oh, he's a nice guy, yeah, I like his ideas. There was something deeper that was emerging, you know. And what pleased me a lot was that I was able to finish the book before he passed away. And a devotee in Brooklyn, Prabhu Vishnu, was going to Vrindavan right at the end of his life, you know. And he brought him a copy of the book and gave it to him. And he saw it, and he just nodded his head and smiled a little. And it was like, when he came back and told me that, I was so happy, you know, that he saw that I had finally done it. You know, because it took a long time, really. And it kind of closed the circle a little bit. And, you know, I was very happy to tell that to Sadhguru, you know, who encouraged me so much, and my other friends who said, you know, okay, you're pretty good, you should write these up, these are good poems. And I kept pushing, and finally it got done. And I was so happy that he saw it. Okay, I guess that's it. Thank you, Kapakabaka. You've been so helpful.
Thank you so much, Jayanta, Prabhu. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming to this. And thank you so much, Prabhu. This was, for me personally, and I think everyone feels the same, incredibly deep and inspiring experience listening to your poems.
I always wonder what it's like, because, you know, I heard someone say once that every language has potential to have beautiful poetry. But I always wonder if you can have beautiful poetry with a Brooklyn accent. But then I heard Bori John, and I felt better. Because he has a real New York accent too. I don't know where he's from, but
Buffalo, I think.
is he from Buffalo? Yeah, but he sounds like a New Yorker.
Yeah.
But you know, he's delightful to listen to. I don't know him, but I've been watching some of his videos. And, well, I have some of the books if anybody wants one. So let me know. I'll sign it for you. Whatever.
Thank you so much. Let's give Jayanta a big round.